What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Jake and Joe Bengals preview show presented by First Star Logistics. A huge game for the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend. Monday Night Football. I guess it's not even the weekend when they will be playing in Denver, Mile High City. A lot of stakes. The schedule upcoming is tough, Joe, and we thought they might be able to sneak one out against the Minnesota Vikings on the road. Obviously, the sudden change moments at the end of the first half, and that one made that an impossible task for this team. But as we look ahead to the Denver game, another very tough defense and another offense with a struggling quarterback. If you're new to the Jake and Joe preview show here, presented by First Star Logistics, we're going to be on the First Star Logistics YouTube channel every week. We've got a post-game show for you after the games as well. That'll be coming to you on Monday night, same channel. Look for the links from Joe Goodberry on Twitter, at Joe Goodberry, from myself on Twitter, at Jake Liscow, from the First Star Logistics Twitter page, at First Star Logistics, at First Star Log, on X, on Twitter. You'll also find all the details about all the awesome giveaways we have going on there, courtesy of First Star Logistics. This week we've got those baseball style Bengals themed Goodberry custom jerseys for you. Find all the details there on X. And if you're looking for new work in the Cincinnati area, First Star Logistics is one of the fastest growing and best companies to work for in Cincinnati. You can check out the details at firststarlogistics.com. Look for the job postings there and join the team. Joe and I love working with First Star Logistics, and you can too. And Joe, as we dive into this Week 4 Monday Night Football matchup, this was going to be a lot more glamorous, I think, for the networks when Joe Burrow was scheduled to suit up for the Bengals. Obviously, that's not the case now, but there's some other storylines going on for the Bengals as they're trying to figure out how to get this thing back on the rails.
Yeah, kind of licking their wounds, maybe even making some excuses, it felt like, during the midweek press conferences from Zach Taylor. It was the fumbles. You know, you don't win a lot of games. We had our stats guy look this up, and this, you fumble that many times. And it's like, whoa, man, I don't think the fan base wanted to hear that at all. They kind of want some heads on sticks, so I get it right now. But at the same time, he is right. When you fumble that many times, when you have turnovers that many times, you don't win too many games. I think I looked it up. It was 6% of teams won games where they had that many turnovers. So you're fighting against it there. And watching the film, it's funny because I agreed with Mike Sands. Him and I were watching this. I think it was Monday morning. We were basically having the same parallel takes at the same time on Twitter. We both kind of looked up like, whew, it's bad on offense. Like, it's so bad. Normally you watch the film and you feel better about a lot of players or situations or whatever happened. I came away from it thinking, oh my gosh, they need to figure out this run game and this offensive line, which we'll talk about a bunch today. We're going to talk about the offensive line probably for a while, as we have for years. But then I did come away on defense thinking, it kept them in the game again, despite the blowout. It could have kept them in the game. And I feel like that's what we're going to have to lean on again going into this week. And I wonder how this offense is going to change and what's going to be the big change and what's going to get this offensive line going in the right direction. And can it happen? And can they get the ball to their weapons as they're going into this Broncos game? I still think about last year's game. It was one of the best games of the year, and the Bengals had to win. It was a must-win game. Broncos were fighting for a playoff spot too under rookie Bo Nix, and the Bengals win in overtime with a minute and some change left. That in and out route to T. Higgins right at the goal line where he catches it, snags it, and gets over the pylon. It was an awesome game, and now we're kind of robbed of that opportunity. But maybe something crazy happens. Maybe they respond. Let's see how this team does respond to that blowout last week.
Well, that's the big question, right? That's what we were talking about immediately after the game, was the response is going to tell us a lot about this team. On the other hand, not to make excuses, they played poorly. There's no excusing what they did against Minnesota. One, Zach's right. If you turn the ball over like that, you are going to lose. Nobody wants to hear that. I agree with you as well, but he's not wrong. The other thing that I wanted to point out, again, not to be an apologist, not to make excuses, is this team has played really good defenses for 3 weeks of the season. Apparently, Jacksonville's defense is going to be good this year. We'll see how it goes when they play some tougher teams. But Jacksonville's defense so far this year, one of the top defenses in the NFL. Same is true for Cleveland. Same is going to be true for Minnesota, at least in terms of how to prepare for that Minnesota defense. They might at
Yeah.
times get got by good quarterbacks. Like if Joe Burrow's playing in that game, obviously we think it goes very differently. But point is, those are three defenses that are tough to play against so far. And while that remains true this week in Denver. So when we're talking about expectations for this team as they play the Denver Broncos, remember last year, I mean, this was a tough game for the Bengals last year when they were in the midst of a winning streak, and they're a flawed team last year. The defense had its issues, and I think still does have some of those issues. But when we're setting expectations for this game and thinking about how the Bengals can go about winning this game, it's fair to keep last year's game in mind, for one, and how difficult it was even with Joe Burrow at quarterback. And two, it's fair to think this is another really good defense that is going to be really challenging for this team. Again, not an excuse, but when we're thinking about how we're framing this game and where the challenges are, it's worth noting that this Denver team built through the trenches, really good on both sides of the ball, unlike the Bengals right now, and built through that defense with a struggling quarterback. So in those ways, it's similar to the Minnesota matchup, but I think a very different stylistic defense the Bengals will be playing this week. We'll get to those matchups in a little bit, but there's some news and developing stories I think that we need to watch from the Cincinnati side of things. And chief among those to me, Joe, after last week, especially after all the talk we've had about the run game and the film takeaways about how they performed on offense, is looking at changing right guard Dalton Reisner, apparently good to go. Sounds like that injury related move for the Bengals last week to get Jalen Rivers in the game was less injury related than perhaps we initially thought. There were performance related motivations to getting Jalen Rivers in the game, and it sounds like that competition at right guard that's been going seemingly for the entire offseason, with Tate Ratledge not drafted by the Bengals in the second round, is still ongoing.
Yeah, this could potentially be the third starting right guard in 4 weeks for the Bengals. Who told us all offseason that they had it? Don't worry, they've done enough basically at that position to feel good about it, and clearly they didn't. They had to sign a guy week 1 of September, and now potentially are going to. Honestly, Rivers was a good prospect, so if it ends up going that direction, it's nothing to be sad about or upset about. It's an exciting moment to watch a young player potentially win a job and maybe elevate this offensive line. And maybe you have 2 guards for the next 4 years or so. That'd be great. That'd be awesome news for this Bengals offensive line looking to the future. If I can talk about Risner for a second, he hasn't been terrible in pass protection as expected. I think I wanted a little bit more from him. He's been a little soft, I think, getting pushed a little bit too close to the quarterback. I don't think either quarterback's been very comfortable with that. I think there's been some spacing and communication issues with Amarius Mims. They seem far apart on stunts and twists. They don't seem like they're passing off run blocks very well. And Reisner hasn't been very good in run blocking, as it's the case with their entire career. But overarching, this offensive line as a whole has not played well. And everyone is playing below, other than Mims. I think Mims looks exactly like pretty much what we've expected through Georgia and then a year and a half now. Everyone else looks like a worse version of themselves. Fairchild, we're still figuring out. Not enough there to even say one way or the other. But Ted Karras, even Dalton Reisner, and even Lucas Patrick in preseason was his worst version of himself. And then you have Orlando Brown Jr., who looks like the worst version of himself as well. And PFF grades back these up. The metrics of whether using ESPN win rates backs it up that these guys are playing, they're underperforming. And it's not just pass protection. Pass protection, I think, at times when they're one-on-one, each guy has flashes of themselves where I can say, oh, yeah, I can see it. They're one-on-one. They're doing their thing. They've done this for years. They're all veterans, the 3 I'm talking about. But in the run game, it's so dysfunctional. I don't think I've ever seen a more dysfunctional run blocking unit ever watching football. And they just don't look like they've ever run the plays. They don't look like they know who, when, and where to block, how to work together. They're not firing off at the same pace or with the same steps. It's all bad. And it didn't get fixed when Jalen Rivers was inserted. So like the idea that, I get it. Let's play the young players. I'm always for that. But Rivers had his mistakes as well in his short time playing in Minnesota. So I'm excited to see him play. but it's not just going to fix. It's not just right guard that's sinking this offensive line. It's everyone right now. And it's starting to get me very concerned with their third offensive line coach hire under Zach Taylor that they may not know how to pick them. Something is fundamentally wrong from the top down here.
Yeah, it's not just the offensive line coach. It's the players that they're putting into situations, the emphasis on pass protection, the approach as an entire team to the run game, where it's impossible
Good
for
point.
me to dismiss the idea at this point that it could just be deprioritized organizationally to the point where it's become like high school level. I mean, we're seeing literally mistakes that you see at the high school level at this point. And let's just look at one of them. I just happened to pull it up here as we're talking, and
This is the
it's
Rivers
a
play.
goal line play, and it's just one of these plays where you're like, man, what the heck is going on? How do you get to this point? And it's a short play, so we'll just let this run a couple times and see if people can see what goes wrong here. But like, how do you get to this point with an NFL team where you have an A gap defender, an A gap defensive lineman that nobody blocks, and you just part the Red Sea
Yeah.
for a point of attack defender to tackle your running back for a loss? Like, this is why Chase Brown's numbers look the way they look.
And it's weird because like I say, this is the Rivers play, but watch the right side. Just like blank out the left side and just watch the right side and let it play. And it looks like everyone is flowing to the right and doing their job. Is the objective really to get Cam Grandy to like trap that nose tackle? That doesn't seem right because he steps out right first. Maybe he's supposed to come back and that opens it up and you're one-on-one with what, Ivan Pace? And then you look at the left side and they all look like they're blocking in unison together. It's like, what is it the scheme? Is it what they're being asked to do? This is very common when you watch the film. They look disjointed on two halves, like to the point where you wonder who is not getting the play call. And that can't happen that often. So how is it being coached? What is the point of emphasis? What is the plan? What is the goal on many of these plays? And this one's a great example.
The fact that this happened twice in a game where they have an A gap defensive tackle unblocked is crazy. And I was going to point out that it's not just the offensive line, and we have this conversation I think every year too. But the tight ends in run blocking and in pass protection, honestly, have left a lot to be desired this year. It's part of why you saw Cam Grandy up last week. They wanted to go to more 12 personnel, and Cam Grandy, of course, put the ball on the ground, didn't earn himself any love, I think, for being one of the 5 guys to fumble the football as he's trying to earn more playing time. Was excited to see Cam Grandy up. Uh, he's mostly up for his blocking, of course, but when you put the ball on the ground, it's not going to earn you a ton of reps. The running backs in pass protection have, for the most part, had a lot of issues this year as well. Chase Brown, I think, was better in week 3. But when we talk about blocking, we talk about the run game. It's even the wide receivers in the run
Yeah.
game. They're asking Andre Yosevach to go dig out a defensive end or something like that. It's just like, what are we doing here? You can't ask some of these guys to make some of these plays, or not the guys that can make some of these plays. And just across the board in the run game, whether it's the offensive line that's had issues, and whether it's the communication issues in the run game or in handling twists and stunts, because it's not just Mims and Reisner, it's the entire offensive line. Whether it's guys that look like they've taken a step back physically and they're getting rocked and they're getting displaced backwards on running plays, whether it's receivers blocking, whether it's running backs in pass protection, it's all kind of a mess right now from a protection and run blocking perspective. Like, any kind of blocking this team has to do is essentially a mess right now. So while we're focused on the offensive line, and I think rightly so, because it is so problematic, it's even a bigger problem than that, which is why I go to the organizational issues.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's hard to have that conversation heading into week 4, a Monday night game, supposed to be a fun time. And you're talking about organizational continued failure to put the good offensive lineman as a priority in the draft. I mean, we say this because we do the draft work, right? Every year. And we're like, Tate Ratledge checks every box. And they like Tate Ratledge, right? Everything we find out afterwards, yeah, they liked him too. But the argument was to take Demetrius Knight, so you take him, and that argument wins in the draft room, and you could have went Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild. I don't want to go down that path in week 4, so I've tried to refrain from it. You opened it up a little bit there, Jake. I'm going to put it back in the box and pack it up nicely because there is a full offseason to have that discussion. But you're right. I think it's top-down issues. And I don't know how it gets fixed. Like this is as bad as we've seen it, which is crazy to say because we've seen some bad offensive line.
Yeah, I said it could be the worst offensive line of the Zach Taylor era on another show this week. And then I was thinking about the offensive line they rolled out there for the Super Bowl. And I was like, okay, maybe not. But the results they're getting in the run game
Yeah.
probably are. And that's crazy for the guys they have and speaks to something else seeming wrong. Maybe the guys they have are just that bad. Maybe it is as simple as that. But after year of this, it's hard to say that it's that simple. The other things that I think are worth talking about here a little bit from a Bengals storyline point of view before we dive into the matchup specifically, Cam Taylor-Britt sounds like he has a chance to play this week. They're going to hope that extra day is enough time for him to get back on the field. Hopefully they're not pushing him back too soon with the hamstring is the caution that I always have with those sorts of injuries. Sounds like Shamar Stewart is pretty doubtful to make it back this week. And there's a lot of talk, and I don't know if this is a real thing or just the thing that the beat is focusing on this week, Joe, but a lot of talk about Miles Murphy, a lot of talk about Logan Wilson and the way that he was pulled off the field at times, despite being the green dot linebacker.
Yeah.
Al Golden was asked about that on Thursday as they reconvened for practice. What did you make of the Miles Murphy and Logan Wilson storylines this week?
I'd like to start with the Logan Wilson because I thought the initial reporting on it, and I don't want to point any fingers, I thought it was laughable. When I saw a 70-30 split, oh no, Logan Wilson, I'm like, hang on now. Let's at least look at when the starters were pulled from the game. So I went and looked at it. It was 81 and some change percent that he was out there. So there was a couple drives. So I went back and watched. I can type in on the pro film on the NFL Pro app and type in, all right, when did Barrett Carter play? When did Oren Burks play? I can watch all the plays where Logan Wilson's there. And I looked at it real fast. And there was two packages. There was two series where they said, all right, Logan, you're going to come off. Oren Burks, you're going to come in. Or Barrett Carter, you're going to come in. And Al Golden said that. Barrett Carter's getting better. We'd like to play him. Let's not just throw him in when Logan Wilson gets hurt like the Browns game and have him swimming, right? I agree. Like that, you can't just have these guys unprepared. So give them a few plays. Have them out there a little bit. And I thought Logan Wilson has been fine. So to me, I thought it was overblown. If it's one drive per game or two drives per game that they want to sub out a linebacker, could you feel really good about Oren Burks, who I think has played really well so far, especially as a blitzer? I think Oren Burks has looked good, to be honest with you. And then Barrett Carter is a guy they really, really, really liked. He had a second round grade on him. To want to develop him is not a bad thing. We're talking about the potential to play Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight as your two linebackers in the future. Hell, there's opportunity for Barrett Carter maybe supplant or take some of the reps from Demetrius Knight because Knight didn't play every snap either. He only played like 63% of the snaps. So when you look at it that way, I thought the rotation was fine, and I would like to see that rotation at linebacker continue to happen. Now it is weird to take the green dot helmet off the field. I kept trying to see who had it. No one else had it. So how's that call happening? Who's doing it? That should have been the follow-up question from the reporters to Al Golden. Well, who's calling your huddle at that point? I'd like to know. And then the other one, Miles Murphy. I went back and watched just the Miles Murphy snaps because I thought, you know what? He had a sack. First time in a year plus he's had a sack. Let's watch it. Let's see what happened. And that's on X, on Twitter. That's available for everyone. And I thought it was an interesting game from him. More of what we know. Number one, his pass rush moves are largely ineffective and not landing. But he is still explosive, can run really fast, kept Carson Wentz in the pocket multiple times, which is a good thing. And then that final 12 minutes that El Golden referenced too, where he says he played with intensity and power, and he did. It was a run game. The Vikings were just trying to run it. They kept pulling linemen or pulling tight ends across and leaving him unblocked, and he was meeting them head on and taking them up with full force. And that's nice to see from Miles Murphy because he needs to play with that. Some of his intensity has been questioned at times. So he was fine against the run. He gave up one big play where he didn't set the edge, where he's unblocked and kind of just got over pursued there as the running back bounced it outside. But Murphy was fine, and it looks like he can help your team. Now, again, so there's going to be someone commenting right now. That's such a low bar for a former first-round pick. Listen, we agree, but you got to get some production out of him at some point, and this is production. He can be a depth defensive end, and it looks like at the very least that's a positive.
Not to be too cynical about it or anything, but was this after the Vikings had pulled their starters, or were there still some guys out there?
So yes, the final 12 minutes that Golden's referencing were backups. But Donovan Jackson, one of those plays was Donovan Jackson still out there because he's a rookie, and he met him on full force and dropped him. And it was nice to see that.
again, not trying to be too cynical about it. I am pro Miles Murphy playing time at this point. I watched Joseph Osai set a weak edge against a running back on a play where, and this is a trend for the Bengals this year. The linebackers are trying to go under everything in the run game. And I think you have to be either faster to react or just faster to go under. Some of these plays are going under, or you
The
need
edge
Joseph
has to be set.
Osai to set a harder edge against a freaking running or wide receiver. It's Jalen Naylor trying to block Joseph Osai on the play, and it's disappointing to see that Osai doesn't just throw the wide receiver into the running back. Maybe Miles Murphy does, and so in that sense, if they trust that Miles is going to play with more intensity, more violence, more physicality, I'm for it. Hard to argue against it, right?
And the Broncos had a lot of success last week running outside, so it's going to be tested.
Which has been such a problem for the
It
Bengals all year.
I think that's why Golden is also emphasizing it as well, talking about we need to set a better edge when he was talking about Logan Wilson. Yes, it's probably a point of emphasis for this week.
Well, I don't think it's Logan. Just to be clear, I don't think that he's saying that Logan needs to set a better edge.
They're
It's like if
asking
they're
about Logan.
asking, right? If they're asking Logan Wilson to run under blocks, you're going to make him look dumb if you don't have an edge and the running back can just run outside everybody. Because you go under it, you force him to cut back in. That's where your linebacker going under the block helps. If you're trying to go over it, you're trying to contain it. You're trying to be another level of trying to push that run back toward other help. That's a bit of a different approach. But right now, the Bengals are just sending their linebackers under all these blocks in the run game. Keep an eye on it. It's an interesting feature of this defense this year that has showed up in the preseason and was like, is Demetrius Knight just like not taking on the block because he doesn't want to? But at
Right.
this point, it looks like they're being coached to do it because they're all kind of taking that approach. Joe, let's talk about this matchup a little bit more. The Broncos with their success running outside, the Broncos with a quarterback in Bo Nix, whose PFF grade is 36th out of 36 QBs. Not like Carson Wentz was great last week. Didn't have to do a whole lot last week, but a bit of a different beast in terms of an offensive line. A really good offensive line by most measures, seemed to be the best, one of the best in the NFL. Not really a weak link across this line that you can take advantage of. There's a strength on strength matchup with Garrett Bowles and Trey Hendrickson. Maybe you put him on the other side, you get him some reps against Mike McGlinchey, who's not as good of a pass protector as he is a run blocker. There are obviously some speedy and talented weapons in Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims Jr., who took the top off the Bengals defense last year. But this offense is probably the portal for the Bengals to get into this game, this Denver offense and Bo Nix. But again, it's going to start with stopping the run, I think. And if you're Denver, you probably just want to try to test those Bengals edges in the run game for a lot of the game and try to take some of the pressure off of Bo Nix.
Yeah, and the Broncos last week really struggled on first and second down. They had a couple of explosive runs with J.K. Dobbins, and that really set them up for their 2 touchdowns. But other than that, they were in third and plus situations all game long. And for a really good offensive line, the Chargers were able to get at least Bo Nix to hold the ball a little bit. I want to say it was more coverage pressure than it was them winning up front. And Nix, his pocket presence right now is not very good. He was bouncing around and jumping around, very exaggerated movements to try and gain time and space. And all that did was get guys closer to him and put him in situations where now he had to run. When he dropped his eyes to move in the pocket, posture dropped, everything dropped. He turned into a runner, and he had to run, which he's got some wheels. He can move a little bit. But at the same time, you're taking away your ability to remain a passer and create these big plays that NFL offenses need to have in order to reach the level I think they need Bo Nix to reach. So I think the Bengals defense has an opportunity to do this. They did it against Carson Wentz. I think they've done it more and more as the season has gone on. A little bit versus the Browns, then more with the Jags, and a lot more with the Vikings while the game was competitive, is that they are passing off their coverages really, really, really well. Showing one thing, maybe showing blitz, backing out of it. The Bengals coverage, I think, on third plus has been really good, which is why I would emphasize them stopping this run big time. Because if you can get into those same situations against Bo Nix that the Chargers did last week, I think you can get him to hold that ball, and maybe that's where the pressure comes, or he puts it into harm's way. The other thing while watching Nix, especially last week, he missed 3 throws. Troy Franklin also, you didn't mention, another speedy receiver. He missed 3 throws last week that should have been touchdowns, and I think that's what's affecting his PFF grade. Number one in the pocket, not great. Even there, that movement sucks in the pocket, right? Did you see him hit that back foot and kind of run up, and now he's launching it with no space in front of him? So he needs to, if he hits these balls, they're going to be a really good team, like the way people expected. They're 1-2 largely because of quarterback play and because they have been very inconsistent running the ball.
Yeah, they're getting these guys open, as we see in all these clips. These are Bo Nix missing wide open targets, and he hit these throws against the Bengals last year.
He did.
It's easy to remember for me anyway. Like he hit all the deep shots last year. Like these are receivers that are clearly winning. They're clearly behind the Chargers corners on these plays,
Two
sometimes
guys here.
multiple. I think that's a flea flicker, right? But
Yeah.
or there's some sort of trick play here. But ball goes out the receiver's hands. That's pretty close. These other ones, I mean, this is a 35, 40-yard throw. You got to hit these throws. The timing's probably bad here. There's a number of hitches. Like you said, that the pocket movement is big movements. You compare this to the way Joe Burrow moves in the pocket when he's going well, and you
Yeah.
see a clear juxtaposition. But for the Bengals, in terms of their task this week, with a good offensive line for Denver and a team that has been able to get the receivers open, they just haven't been able to hit the passes. It is a tough task, and they've had some help from other teams. If Bo Nix has a bounce back game and plays like he did against the Bengals last year, then that was prime time last year too. That could be a tough day for this defense. But the one thing that I would like to see, Joe, from this defense this week is, can they figure out the first drive stuff? The penalties on the first drive, 3 straight weeks with a touchdown on the first drive. Then they kind of have settled in each game as the game goes on. Like they found the adjustments. They're still a single high, very heavy single high team, which does leave you open to some of those single high beaters that you're going to see. But outside of that, outside of some of the crosser stuff, like there's going to be digs that are open against this defense. It's just going to be the nature of it. If the pass rush isn't getting home, like think that Justin Jefferson in breaker last week's like a 15-yard play, he's wide open. Like that's just going to be open at times against this defense if the pass rush doesn't get home. But finding those adjustments earlier in the game, coming out with a better plan to deal with scripted drives, that's been a problem for this Bengals defense so far. And with the way the offense has been, getting down to a 7-0 hole is not really where you want to be if you're Al Gold and you're the Cincinnati Bengals this week.
Yeah, it's right, because the task becomes different when the offense isn't explosive, right? When the offense isn't what they're supposed to be. If we're 2024 offense and you give up that first drive on defense, okay, we expect to match that on offense. But it's different now. The defense has to play at another level. If they're just 18th, we're like, that's fine. We'll take that with the Joe Burrow offense. They can't be 18th with Jake Browning in the current offense, right? They need to be, if they're going to win or make a run and keep the seat warm, if Burrow ever has a chance to come back this year, that defense needs to find another level. And that starts on that first drive. I agree with you, because you can't start off 7-0 hole. That is tough for this offense to dig out of. I mean, I don't know if you were to project for the rest of the year. I just did this. I did my weekly picks on Yahoo, right? Yahoo Pick'em, I think it is. One of the questions this week is for bonus points. How many points will the Bengals score? How many points will the Broncos score? Because it's a primetime game. There's 2 Monday night games, actually. So if you want to watch Dolphins Jets for an alternative, not me either. So this is the matinee one here. But I put 13 points for the Bengals offense because I just don't know where it's coming from. Other than maybe throw it up to T and Jamar and hope they make a play. There's nothing else going on for this offense right now. And not even the tight ends, right? They're barely featured. Fan has had a couple big catches, but then after being checked down man last week and fumbling one of them and being concussed, we got to see if he's available, even though there was no word on that as of today. But there's nothing there in the run game. You would think they'd at least try to throw the ball to Chase Brown and get him going that way. There's nothing going on other than these 2 receivers. And it's just, I don't know where the points are coming from.
The screen game has been so bad so
So
far.
bad.
And they figured it out with Browning last time out there. Last time out there, they started with a really, really bad game against Pittsburgh. They came back on a Monday night game. At the time, Jacksonville was actually in contention and Jake Browning was on fire. Maybe he just needs that Monday night game. Maybe he just needs to knock the rust off. But the challenge still exists with this Denver defense. And I mean, you probably, if you're the Bengals, are going to test Riley Moss early and often in this one if you can, after the way he could not handle at all T. Higgins last year. Probably are going to try to play a lot in 12 again this year or this week because you're getting nothing out of your third receiver spot. And so maybe they like the way Denver matches 12 more than they like the way that they match nickel. I think that there's a pretty good nickel corner on that Denver Broncos defense. So Pat Surtain on one side, obviously good, despite what his PFF grade looks like this year, if you're looking at his PFF grade, like I am currently. But I imagine you look at that Riley Moss matchup often, but it's just like, how do you deal with the pass rush? Denver, I think, leads the NFL according to NFL Pro, whatever they use for pressure counting in QB pressures. Nick Benito is an absolute tear coming off the edge. On the other side, Jonathan Cooper is pretty dang good too. In the middle, you got DJ Jones, you got Zach Allen that you have to deal with. Jonathan Franklin Myers is pretty good too. Like all these guys are players that if you think about like, oh yeah, the Bengals could use those guys. Probably yes to all of them in different ways. And Nick Benito is a guy that, he's a draft crush for me. I don't know if you remember that, Joe. I
do, because his pass rush win rate was crazy. Remember that? Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, and he's a smaller guy, but the speed. And here's just an example of what Orlando Brown's going to have to deal with this week. This is against Joe Alt. He's here on the left side of the offense. And Joe Alt's been good. He's a good player. And Justin Herbert maybe is a little bit deep here after a play action drop, but Orlando Brown is a good pass protecting tackle for the most part. But the sudden moving, quick guys that can just turn the corner on you, like that is a bit of a scary matchup for Orlando Brown.
No doubt.
And that's just one of the pass rushing weapons for Denver. Really good complementary defensive line that they have to deal with this week.
And they will send 4 and 5 a ton. So they know they can get pressure with 4 because the front's good up there. But they will get a 5th guy and send them. And it really makes it tough because now you're going one-on-one across the board up front. It gives you the opportunity. They feel good with Surtain. They even feel good with Riley Moss. I know that's the guy to pick on, but like he's not a bad player. It's just that you can beat him with T. Higgins. Of course you can. And even last week, watching the Chargers-Broncos game, they felt good with Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey getting in there. And Quentin Johnson had a couple of big plays. So you can get the ball to your weapons if you can protect. Herbert is playing at a really, really high level right now. I don't know how much everyone is caught of him, but he made 2 big off-script plays last week that really won them the game. And if Browning can do that and can buy time, can stay on his feet and find that guy, he was unable to do that last week versus the Vikings. He threw a couple of interceptions doing it versus the Jags. If he can clean that up and make those plays, it could keep them in this game. It could make the difference. It could make this a tight game at the end. But really, that's what we're watching for. Can the defense of the Bengals get Bo Nix to make a mistake, or is Bo Nix just going to shoot himself in the foot by missing these open guys? And then can Browning make a couple plays and get it to the weapons? And if so, I think we got a chance.
You got to probably sprinkle a turnover or two in there for the Bengals. Maybe some defensive points, maybe a special teams play. Like it's going to probably take some of that this week. I think it's tough. It's a tough matchup. The betting line, 7.5 points, I think is back to 7.5. It's been between 7.5 this week. I think reflects that. I think it's a difficult matchup. I think that the thing that I'm curious to see here, Joe, and what I hope we're talking about on Monday after this game is what are the adjustments that we're starting to see? Because the one thing this coaching staff has been able to do well consistently for all of their flaws, everyone wants to fire Zach Taylor, everyone wants to blow everything up right now. They've been good at making adjustments and problem solving as things go. It's very frustrating that it seems like every year they have significant problems they have to solve and significant adaptations that they need to make after disaster Septembers, I guess. Every year something crazy and disastrous has happened. It seems like in September every year, but they have been good at figuring it out as they go. And hopefully they can start to do that this week. It's not like it gets easier with Detroit. It's not like it gets easier the next week with Green Bay. So they got to start making these adjustments sooner than later, or this thing, like I said, kind of maintained all week. It can go from a bad couple of weeks into a death spiral really quick if you really can't figure anything out here with these difficult teams on the schedule.
Yeah, and then we'll be having much different conversations and potentially in 3 weeks about starting young guys, trading potentially maybe Trey Hendrickson. That's already starting to bubble up, and they're 2-1 and leading the division. But it's on. You can see it on the horizon. It's over there. If we walk down that path, if it happens, if they get handled in these next 3 weeks against 3 very good teams, potentially 3 very good teams. We'll see if the Broncos are, but yeah, we could be having that conversation. But yeah, Jake, great point though. The Bengals have adjusted. They have rebounded before. Will it happen now?
Yeah, that is what we're going to be watching against this Denver Broncos team this week. We'll break down with emotion. You catch us right after the game here on the Jake and Joe postgame show presented by First Star Logistics. Same spot after the game on Monday. I know it'll be late. You're going to want to be here anyway. It'll either be cathartic or it'll be a celebration, one of the two. And we have awesome stuff to give away this week. It's those baseball style, Joe Goodberry style, Bengals style jerseys that we've got for you. All the details on First Star Logistics Twitter page at First Star Log on Twitter. And if you're looking for some work in the Cincinnati area, of course, you can check out firststarlogistics.com for all the details. One of the fastest growing, one of the best companies to work for in the Cincinnati area. Like I've said numerous times on this show, a great partner for Joe and I, hopefully a great partner for some of you out there as well. Until the post-game show, that's going to do it for the Jake and Joe Bengals preview show presented by First Star Logistics. Thanks for listening. We'll see you Monday.